During the entire time that he's been on CLG, I've actually always thought that the mid laner Link has been kind of a key to the way that CLG has had success, and well, not that much success, but okay, they've had some more success than in the past, and the problems that the team has had ever since he joined and ever since they've been during the LCS era, because he's been around since the spring split, which is when he joined and replaced Big Fat LP. Now, if you think about the world he came into, okay, the CLG he joined when he replaced Big Fat LP, obviously a legendary mid laner from Season 1. Season 2, he was still hanging on there for the first part, but as Season 2 went on, he kind of started to fall off. He couldn't hit a skill shot, it seemed. He was like trying to smart cast everything. In general, this was the era of the super mids, and he couldn't match up to that level. Not that they necessarily needed him to. They had this super good bot lane, and then top lane, Hotshot GG just tried to play safe. When they had Saint, they had a carry jungler. So overall, they had a unit that could still make something work. They didn't necessarily need Big Fat LP to carry, but then they got rid of Saint, and then they moved Hotshot to different positions, then they moved Charles to different positions, breaking up the strength of the bot lane, and they really did need it. It wasn't just enough to have Doublelift anymore, who was very strong in Season 2. You needed some sort of secondary carry, and that's why it made sense that eventually, if you wanted to be the top team in NA, you're going to have to get rid of Big Fat LP. So who did they go to? They went to Link. Now, people who know Link now won't maybe understand the context. This guy, I think it was Skara in my second grilled interview with him, who actually described Link as like, Link was the player in NA who had the highest of the amateur player hypes around him. He was playing on CLG Black back in the day. Supposedly he'd had offers from teams. He'd maybe even had offers from CLG, but at the time he turned them down. He didn't want to become a pro or take the risk. He was at school and he wanted to do that perhaps full time or go into some sort of career. So League was just a hobby. It was just something for fun. But he had the hype of being this amazing solo queue player, could play all the different roles, play as different champions. And it was always kind of billed as one of those, like almost like to a lesser degree, kind of an Apto type situation. Like, oh, imagine if that guy actually like went full time and went to just be a pro and, you know, forget all the rest of that stuff. He was just going to go 100% in LCS. But then that happened. He accepted the offer. He came in the spring split of the first ever split of LCS, spring 2013 in NA, and it was just okay. Okay, he was trying to adapt to playing in this new team. They still had Hotshot top. Afro had only just come in at support. He was far from the player he is now. He actually was kind of like, he would struggle sometimes. He'd do okay sometimes. Doublelift himself was kind of struggling to adapt to like the Season 3 matter of being an AD carry. He was without Chauster there as his kind of support guy. He was all over the place in terms of he couldn't really carry to the same degree. If you remember, a lot of the best plays of Doublelift at that time was him kind of just doing crazy mechanical shit just to get out of stupid like 1v2 scenarios he probably shouldn't even have been in, you know. So the team was just a mess at the time, okay? They had Chauster trying to jungle. It was just a mess. Okay, it makes sense that they make the playoffs, then they just bomb out in the first round, okay? But then they make changes, okay? Now they brought in Inconsistency top lane. They tried this weird lineup where they had Big Fat LP as the jungler. Again, weird roster moves. Okay, Inconsistency had actually never been a top laner before. He's trying to learn that role. Again, there's all the classic scenario of CLG where it's almost like they set up the excuses before the season starts, and then they keep feeding in the excuses like, oh, new lineup, person just changed position. Oh, give us a chance. The potential's really good, and then they never have to deliver on that, because then when it fails, they just make more changes to change another position. Oh, potential, the new lineup. That was all built around that. So the problem with all these scenarios is a lot of this period of time, you can see these other things, Chaucer jungle, the Intelso first season top, you can see why you wouldn't immediately look as Link as the problem, okay? But actually, what's funny is people will think, because I've been critical of Inconsistency, I obviously used to be critical of Hotshot and Chaucer when they were junglers. Actually, I quite early on was looking at Link and I was saying, well, if he had all this hype surrounding him and he's supposed to be this very versatile player, very skilled player, and clearly we would see like flashes of it in LCS. We just didn't see it with any kind of consistency. You didn't know what you were going to get from Link. He wasn't like any sort of a carry player. If he'd have just been some player in a beast team with an amazing top lane or some kind of godlike bot lane or some really sick jungler who could help him out and he just has to play safe, okay, maybe he could have just been fine, contribute to the team. But in this team, actually, when you looked at all the other flaws they had, you really did need him to kind of step up and be the second carry. And so going forwards from there, as you kind of fixed some of the other parts, it became obvious that Link was one of the weak areas in the team. Okay, so you got Inconsistency was in his second split as a top laner, the spring split of this year. Clearly improved a bit. I mean, not much, but he'd gotten a bit more stable. He'd gotten a few champions he could play. He had a sense of what he had to do, and obviously he didn't have to carry, but he knew what he had to do within the team, so he could contribute in some sense. Then you got Dexter as a jungler immediately. You've solved a lot of those problems you had in the past. Remember the problems in the past with the jungler falling off because it's Hotshot GG. Then you had, obviously, they never had a real jungler after St. Vicious. They just kept rotating other people who weren't junglers in the position and never really had proper success. So you had a proper jungler now, someone with some caliber. Not only that, he has some international experience. He also doesn't come from NA, he doesn't come from the CLG world where you necessarily have to be worried about playing TSM and knowing they're always going to be... None of the back stuff. You're gradually erasing all the negative culture of the past and bringing in some new aspects. So you put this team together. Crucially, you brought Afromu back in, but the problems of the past, actually, we're getting past those now. He's making this really sick bottom lane. So now you're looking at the team. This team's starting to take shape. This is not a bad team, actually. We've got Monty as a coach. So it seems like his strategical approach is being implemented. We've got Link doing some shot calling. Now we're starting to see, oh, is this the promise that we expected from Link? Like, very versatile, can play all these different champions to go with the comp, which is ideal, you think, if you have a coach who stresses, like, comp over just playing a champion you want to play, over just playing just the OP thing. It's what you're going to do with the comp. This all seems to be taking form now. And what happens in the spring split? They make it to the semi-finals. They narrowly lose to TSM. They have a pretty solid third place game. They finished third overall. Wow. CLG's never even made top 4 before in LCS. Suddenly, they faced third. And not only that, because they've only just lost to TSM, people want to say, oh, maybe they would have placed second. Oh, maybe they should have placed second. Oh, next season, that's the goal. Second, maybe start to contend with Cloud9. But we all know, fell off a cliff at that point. Here's the thing. If we're going to look at the summer split, you can't just look at the summer split and pretend like, oh, everything went wrong there. They were always bad. Seraph was the problem. And, you know, Monty's a terrible coach and all these things. It's funny, in League of Legends, whenever you keep teams together, I've noticed that a lot of the seeds of their success, you can see it in their weaknesses and their failures and the times when they don't succeed. And vice versa. When they're succeeding, you can almost sort of piece together, well, what could possibly be what will cost them in the future? Why would they fall at any point? Or what would allow other teams to overtake them? So in this particular case, when Link was in that position where they were finishing third, he still hadn't fully been able to become what you could call a legit carry. I mean, remember, he doesn't have to be the main carry. At this point, now that you've got Afromu back, and actually he's built into a much better support player, and crucially, Doublelift's now got a proper bot lane partner where they're building one of the strongest bot lanes in the country. Now you're in a position where you've got a really solid first carry. Now all you need from Link is that second carry role. So versatility, just play matchups that allowed you to do well and get ahead, or play even, or just use that aspect. Certain champions obviously quite good on. Think of his Nidalee, for example. Play these champions. He had some games on LeBlanc that were pretty good. He can play these champions. He can maybe even dominate lane. He can even maybe have a big impact on the game. Truly be a carry. Here's the problem though. Whenever we got to looking at extended periods of time, Link could never provide that carry role with consistency. And crucially, every time we got to the playoffs, the same story repeated over and over and over. So like I mentioned, the main reason why you needed that carry was because Doublelift has always been the carry since he came into the team in 2012. Once you lost Saint, who was kind of doing some carry jungle role, Big Fat LP was never the carry mid laner in that era. Hotshot at that point was really falling off, and he was literally at that point just going even. He was just doing his kind of like play the tank, just farm, just that style. That's the only carry they had on the team. Now listen, in Season 2, AD carries were so powerful, you could just about get away with it. They still never won any big championships, but once you go forwards from that into Season 3, now you really need a second carry. And with it being CLG and their history, so Hotshot GG top lane, Voyboy, but then they don't support him properly, and they have his jungler as a guy who used to be his top laner. Then you go to having Hotshot again. That really was not a good period. Then you have Inconsistency, and he's inexperienced to that role. He's having to learn into that role. Then eventually he's just having to just find a way to contribute. He can't be a carry top laner. In CLG history, people are getting used to the idea that we're never going to have a carry top laner. And, you know, it was the tank meta at the end of Season 3 going into Season 4. It wasn't really a role to carry from. So it all came down to Link. It had to be the mid lane that was going to carry this particular scenario here. Link, unfortunately, is the classic example of a kind of guy that I see in NALCS quite often, actually. It's the guy where he has 1 in 3 games in the regular season he'll do really well in. And he does well enough in that game that people think to themselves, okay, if he could just do that every game, and he could just fix whatever mistakes happening in the other 2 games. And so we just take those other 2 and go, okay, those are mistakes, those will be fixed. So erase those for a second, put those to one side, take this game, and imagine that was his game all the time. Well, I mean, we've got one of the top 3 mid laners in the whole region here, potentially one of the best in the world. Versatility, great on certain champions, very good sense of matchups because he's in solo queue, plays all these different roles, all these different positions. This doing a bit of shot calling, been in the team a long time now. This is potentially an amazing player here. The problem is, you can't just put to the one side those other 2 games. In one of those games he does badly, and the other one he does average. The reason you can't put those other games to one side is because what is he going to do to fix those problems? It's not just that they're just flukes, and now he's having this really great game. The inconsistency is actually when he has the amazing game. That's kind of the outlier there. Most of the time, it's kind of average, or it's the bad one. The overall, if you run a line through all of it, the line goes fairly average, actually, in NALCS. And if you look at it now, that's probably where you'd have to put him if you were ranking the mid laners. This is the thing. Because no one's ever addressed what the problems Link had were, and I've certainly never heard him properly address them, they've never been fixed. They've never been addressed. People have just sat back and hoped, okay, I just really hope that this season he gets it together. I hope that when he in week 4 and 5 had that great series of games, I just hope that guy turns up okay. And then they look at the other things. They look at the strategy, or they look at, oh, the top lane's failing, or they look at, oh, there's some problems with the jungler there. And yet this is a guy who needs to be the carry on this team. He needs to be the guy who when him and Doublelift carry the game, boom, there you go, you can win the whole series. With other teams, as long as you have 2 really strong carries, you're always going to be in contention. You don't have to have 3 people across the board. You don't have to have every position's really good or an all-star or even can contribute massively. Once you have these carries, then other roles don't have to do as much, actually. I actually have felt sorry for some of the players who've played jungle and top lane or support even in some of these CLG teams, that they're put in a position where they will always get shit on, because the mid laner, especially in certain metas, some of the ones Link's played in, where it's been like wave clear type metas and passive mid laners, you can just get by with like going even, not really having any game impact, getting a lot of farm, getting out of fights, using Lulu, using LeBlanc, using Italy, get the fuck out the fight, don't really die much, get a few kills, you lose the game, and then everyone goes, oh, you see, the jungler, terrible job, vision control. I mean, how is he supposed to get vision control with his team's losing and they get their fucking head smashed in and people are running out of fights? Oh, the top player, what's he doing there? You know, he just got destroyed in lane or whatever. Meanwhile, it's a player who doesn't even play tanks. He's been asked to play tanks now, or all he can do is play tanks, and then other champions come into the meta that aren't tanks, and you can see all the problems here. There's a saying, right? I think it was Jeff Van Gundy, this guy who used to be the coach of the Knicks. He's a really intelligent basketball analyst, actually. He does it for, I think it was NBC, could be ESPN, I'm not sure. He does basketball anyway. He used to do the finals the last few years. And this guy had a really great point about stars. He essentially said something along the lines of like, either your star, his strengths have to be able to cover, he called it the non-strengths, but that's kind of a stupid way to say it. I'd just say weaknesses. His strengths have to in some way be able to cover the weaknesses of the players in the team who aren't the stars. Or, and here's the key point, he put it the other way, or your weaker players, let's just call them support players, since these are such loaded terms. Support players, their strengths have to be able to cover the weaknesses of the star. Now, the problem with the CLG approach is that it feels like they're going towards the first one, the one where you've got your star players and then you've got these obvious weaknesses at the other positions. It used to be support and jungle and top. Now it's kind of, support's gotten better. Now it's mainly been, jungle's a bit shaky, but it's mainly been top that's been the problem. So to cover those, we need our stars to do that. We need them to be stars and their strengths to cover that. It feels like CLG, if they want to keep a player like Link, should have gone the other way. They should have gone, okay, we've got this guy, he's very talented. If we can make him comfortable, he can play to an incredible level. If we can give him the right champions, he'll play well. If we can give him the right role where he has this much to do and he can contribute in these certain ways we know he can, but we don't ask too much of him in shot calling or don't ask too much in terms of carrying, except in certain scenarios, he can be very successful. Now, if we start to put other pieces around him that can fill in what I need there, what he can't give me, and cover some of his weaknesses, now we could make him viable. We could make him a top player. Instead, what we're doing is putting him in as a star. We're putting him in as if he was like Bjergsen, saying, okay, carry the game every time, please. Oh, and shot call while you're at it as well. And, oh, and you know what? while Doublelift's carrying, you have to be like straight up second carry. You're never going to get a carry from your top lane, mate. Your jungler's not that style of carry jungler. It doesn't even matter how people play it now. It's got to be you. You've got to do all that. And if you can't, you're a failure. And not only that, people might not even blame you. They'll just blame your teammates as well. This is a terrible scenario for someone like Link to be in. So I think that's a mentality going forwards. When you think about CLG, break down Link and then also put him in the context of the team. Of what are they trying to accomplish with him here? Because I would hope by now they've realized, okay, this problem, which is, let's go to the carry role first, okay. The problem with the carry role is he clearly has the skill set to do it. Does he have the personality to do it? It seems like sometimes in the regular season he does. But then I look at some of the games they've lost, and I'm describing them when he would play certain passive mid laners, and he would just kind of... It's kind of the style Shifters actually pioneered recently, where he just gets the fuck out there, doesn't have as much game impact because he doesn't want to take a risk now. He doesn't want to put it out there and potentially die and lose the game, and I'm the one who threw. Instead, it's sort of like you never really give yourself a chance to get in the game, and then you're losing the game anyway. So those flaws are going to show up on other parts of the map there. You're just kind of not having any impact at all. Yet in this particular team, CLG, we need our mid lane to carry. We need a strong impact from him. We need him to make plays. We need him to shot call. We need him to open up the game for us. And if he's not doing that, it's not enough to have an okay KDA. He's actually having a negative impact on the totality of what CLG, the unit, is trying to accomplish here. They're not getting what they need from him. So, okay, we think of the good games he has before, but then he goes into the playoffs and he quite clearly is getting affected by pressure and not being able to live up to his role. I mean, the most obvious example to bring up is the Kog'Maw game in the playoffs, last playoffs. It was a strange pick. It didn't really seem to make a lot of sense in terms of how he played it out, the AP build. And then he was just missing ultimates all over the place. One of the things about Link that you'd say is a strength is the guy, when he's in the regular season, he's having one of those 1 out of 3 good games. Seems to be really good at hitting skill shots. His mechanics seem to be really smooth, very fluid, top-notch, to a high level, can go head-to-head with people like Bjergsen, and yet you come to the playoffs and it just disappears completely. His confidence, his mechanics, everything just disappears completely, and you don't have a carry anymore. You have at best someone who will just go even or just play that sort of role, and if pressure is on him, he just withers a bit. Now then, one of the bigger problems here is not just, if we just had him only as his mid lane, I was saying to him, listen, I need you to carry all this stuff and you're not doing that, I could criticize just on that level. But then he's our shot caller on top of that. Now listen, it's a problem of CLG themselves overall, that they've never had a proper shot caller. They've never properly recruited for it. Like if I were them, the first thing I'd have done is gone shopping for someone who directly can do shot calling, is confident in it, wants to do shot calling. Because here's the key point. I don't feel like Link properly takes responsibility for shot calling. He's done it all this time. He was implemented in the system. He was the guy who was doing the shot calling for a lot of this time, we've been told. And yet we hear these stories, I think he's maybe even said it himself, where there'd be times when they'd be losing games and he would just stop talking. He'd stop shot calling. Now, I hope this isn't a very abstract point to make, because it should be a rule of how League of Legends works. If you are the primary shot caller, you can never stop shot calling. It doesn't matter if you're not feeling the game, you're not reading it correctly, things are going badly, you've made some bad decisions before. These are things we fix after the game and before the next game. We don't stop shot calling. That's the one thing that cannot happen. You can keep making calls and make really bad ones. You can keep making calls and fuck it up and don't read the game properly, and you told him the wrong thing and you took this information in incorrectly. These are all things we can fix once we know what's going wrong. The one thing we can't fix is if you just don't say anything. Then no one is shot calling. And even worse, if you make one of your own teammates just suddenly have to go, I guess I'm just shot calling, do this. Like, the worst moment ever in a loss is when everyone's just sat around like waiting for the other person. What are we doing? Oh, they're attacking. Like, it has to be someone doing it. So if he was going to do that, it's one of those shit I'll get off the pot type moments. Like, either take responsibility for it and do it, and then listen, if you lose, yeah, some of your teammates might blame you and all the rest of it. Although in this particular team, you could just say, well, who are you? Which one of you is going to do shot calling? I don't see any of you stepping up. So actually, I think you'd be pretty justified there. Accept full responsibility or don't do it. That's another thing, okay. I always used to say when I was the editor-in-chief of sites, like, it's my job as the boss to only give you jobs and ask you if you can do them if you're actually capable of doing them, okay? If I ask you one time and you say, yeah, I can do that, boss, and you haven't really tried it before, and you try it and you fail, okay, I don't blame you, okay? We didn't know that it was going to go like that. Now, if I ask you a second time and you say, yeah, I can definitely do that, now, that is a problem, okay, where you're now selling me that you can do something that we've seen you couldn't do before. If you fail now I could come to you and be like, why do you keep telling me you can do this? You clearly can't actually fulfill the responsibilities of this. If I ask you a third time to do it, Even if the third time you tell me, boss, I can do that. Don't worry, I can handle that completely. Now it's my fault. Why am I? I should be, as the boss, I have my own responsibility, which is how overall operations run okay. Why am I asking someone I've repeatedly observed can't do a job? Just because he's telling me he can, I'm now going, oh, okay, well, that supersedes my own judgment and my own ability to analyze what's going on. So I guess what I'll do is let you do it, and then I'll just blame you if it goes wrong. No, at that point, ultimately, I'm delegating responsibility. It's my responsibility initially. I delegate it to you so that you can act in that way in my stead. So actually, people like CLG have to take responsibility themselves for repeatedly putting Link in this situation. He has to take it himself to some degree because he keeps apparently asking for it or embracing it or not telling them, listen, I can't do that. Like, maybe I can do it in the regular season. Maybe when the games don't matter as much, I can do it. I can perform as second carry and I can do some shot calling. Sometimes I'll win some games. Okay, but when it gets to the playoffs, I get nervous. I can't play my champions as well. I'm already having a hard enough time trying to get this second carry thing going. I can't do shot calling on top of that as well, you know. They don't do that. Because think about it. If you did that, then what would be the next step if you're CLG? Well, either you have to kick Link out, okay, which I don't think you necessarily have to do, but it's an option. Or you have to say, right, remember the thing the Jeff Van Gundy thing said? So now one of our other positions, which also have their own problems, either one of them has to be the shot caller and take that role on, so Link doesn't have to do it, and maybe he can focus more on being second carry, or we have to bring in a shot caller. How about that? How about maybe Link could be the secondary carry, and maybe he could be more comfortable, maybe he could have the right role, but someone else has to do that role. We can't overload him when he's already having problems with his own role individually. I feel like Link himself, though, that's why I tied it into the idea of responsibility going down the chain. I feel like he himself has been a bit in denial in the past about nerve problems. And I understand why, okay, because young guys especially, and men, there's kind of like an association with being nervous or not clutch or failing under pressure as exactly that, failure. If you say failure like that, a lot of people think of like, well, I'm not a failure, I'm not a loser. That was an accident, like, I was late to work and I'm having problems at home and listen, I'll get my head in the game. Like, it's all excuses, it's all denial, it's all push it away. It's not failure. That's something else. There's a reason why that happened. In reality, the thing with failure is failure can be really useful. It can teach you exactly where you're going wrong. It can tell you, look, focus in this area here. Something's going wrong here, or there's something leading up to that that's putting you in a bad position each time from which you can't get out of. Instead, if you put it all to one side, you'll never learn from the failure in that sense. You'll just say, oh, no, that isn't the case. There wasn't anything like that, actually. What I'm doing is right. It's kind of like that stupid meme of like Principal Skinner in The Simpsons where he's like, am I out of touch? And he's like, no, it's the children. The children are wrong. Like, it's the idea that like you're just in cognitive dissonance. You're just in denial of reality of what's actually happening. Whereas if these things are happening to you over and over again and you follow the path of like, well, I started here and I tried this and this didn't work in this way. Okay, go back again. Start here, do the same thing again, go to here. At some point, you have to look where in the process it's going wrong. You can't just go, oh, that's the wrong outcome, actually. I started here and I did exactly that. And then I was supposed to have a lot of success. And I was supposed to, oh, why isn't that? It's so unfair. Why doesn't that work for me? Oh, it's that teammate's fault. And, the coach didn't give me a good, like, at the end of the day, you can't just blame everyone else. You have to take responsibility yourself. Now, here's one of the final notes I'll make. Like I said, maybe Link doesn't have to be the shot caller. Maybe he looks at himself and says, okay, you know what? Actually, I think I could do the secondary carry role, or maybe you don't do that. Maybe even just make him a support middle, get a hard carry top laner. I don't know. But let's say he just said the original premise. Okay, I'm going to be the secondary carry. Okay, it doesn't work if I'm the shot caller, okay. Maybe I'm not suited to it. I'm not that sort of person. Maybe I should just be kind of like a floating third type star, and I can do a bit here, or I can just go even and ensure that if the bot lane's really strong, we have a go even top, then we can win that way. Okay, maybe this is the role I can do. But what is the end goal for me as a competitive player? Currently, the path you're embracing now is that you're going to fail at the two things you're trying to do. Really good shot caller and secondary carry. You're not succeeding in that area. So what is the point of being a pro gamer? I mean, when I heard this original story that he didn't want to necessarily go full-time as a pro, like he wanted to stay in school and keep doing that, didn't want to necessarily go all out on competition, and maybe he enjoyed playing for fun with the sort of the amateurish semi-pro teams like CLG Black, etc. When I heard that, I actually wondered, oh, maybe he's just not a guy who like lives and breathes League. Like he doesn't, like it's not like live or die whether he does well in an LCS. Maybe he just thinks, oh, it'd be cool to be in LCS for a split, or you know what, we finished 5th to 6th. Oh, but wouldn't it be awesome to make the semis and have a chance at the final? Like, I don't know whether he's the sort of guy who has the drive to be like, oh, I have to be number one no matter what, and I'll do everything it takes, and no matter what problems I have, I'll face them head on, and I'll say, okay, that's my problem. Okay, fuck it, that's my problem. I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to, listen, I'm even going to go to players over here who might be less skilled than me, but they somehow had the mental fortitude, or they do well in a situation. I'm going to observe them. I'm going to ask them questions, see what they do there. I'm going to read sports psychology books. I'm going to maybe even go to some sort of therapy or something and just talk about what happens to me when I'm under pressure. Why do I crumble in this particular way? Because I am crumbling in this particular way. Yet if I look at my career, I'm not shit. I see myself in the regular season. I have these games where it goes well. Okay, let's go to those games. What's happening in those games? How do I feel in those games? What happens in those games when I'm in the moment where that's where I could fail or succeed? And in those games I succeed, what is the feeling like then? What are the thoughts like then? What is my role like then? Am I feeling freer then? Is someone doing something to help me here that doesn't happen later? All these questions can only start if you acknowledge those things. There's points where I'm successful and things I can do and things I can contribute. There's areas where I'm being asked to contribute, or I'm being demanded that I contribute, or I'm demanded that I perform this when I can't. And there's some chasm or something between these points. And I want to be over here, but I'm stuck over here at the moment. And until you do that, and until Link does that, and crucially until CLG does that, because remember the point again, ultimately, if Link wants to do it or not, that'll be for his own career. But whether Link does or not, CLG themselves have to take responsibility and look at the team and decide, based on what they know now, can we make this person work within our team? I've always said, I'll leave this as a final topic, okay? I've actually made this point many, many times across many different games. People think when I criticize players that it means that the player is terrible and he should be like kicked out of the scene and he could never work anywhere. The majority of players who were in the top level of their regions, okay, so just the domestic regions, so say in Europe, NA, Korea, whatever, the majority of the players who were on, say, top 5 teams in those regions, I'd say maybe 70 or 80% of them could be in the best team in that region. But here's the key thing, not just the team they're in now, they'd have to be in the right sort of setup, and it goes back to what I said before. Either their strengths would have to be able to cover the weakness of a star and contribute that, or if they're the star, maybe they'd have to be able to cover a weakness of a support player. Whichever position you're in, or if they're the support player and they have a weakness, their star is the right one to match up with them. You need to be in the right team, with the right environment, with the right, here's the crucial thing, with the right contribution. Like, I can do this over here. They're asking me to do this and I can sort of do it. No, it has to be one where this is what I can do, okay? I'm not good in that area. Maybe I can't even do that. But this one thing here, I can do that for you every game. Like, maybe I'm a good teleport top only. Okay, I can do that for you. I can zone. I can't win my lane. I can't win all these matches. I've got a few champions. I can zone. Let's get some hard carries in. I'll zone the enemies off. They kill. You see, you just have to find the right role for these people. So I feel like I've given a lot of topics there, a lot of food for thought on the overall problems that I think Link's had within CLG, because obviously, listen, it's like an obvious pun to go, he's the missing Link or whatever, but he really has been, because as CLG's moved out of the era of the old school legacy names who used to be great players but they'd fallen off, Link should have been the bridge there. He should have been the guy where, okay, we're keeping Doublelift, but in the end, we're going to have to get rid of everyone else. So Link's the new school talent who we're going to put in, and he's going to grow into a second carry. And then, okay, now we've got these 2 solid carries. Now we're going to put the pieces around them. Where are we going to put them? Because as you go forwards from here, if Link isn't going to be that role, and now they're even potentially talking about moving into other roles, then you feel like it was a missed opportunity actually for CLG. Like, they invested all this time and all this stuff, and again we're going to change play, and then what is the same excuse again? He's learning a new role, and listen, the potential of this new role is incredible. He can play all these champions. We've been down this road before, so whether or not CLG, whether Link do anything, I think I've outlined the points there. So I'm going to do more of these videos. They won't all be about League of Legends, so check the title. I'll put like which game it is or whatever. Thorin's thoughts. I'll see you next time.